Hello, thank you for watching Bible Words in Hebrew. Today we discuss the word simcháh. This is the third study in the Mussar series. We started with the word Mussar. Last time we did Ema, fear. And today we have the word simcháh. And first we go to Ecclesiastes 9 verse 7. I use the Current Jerusalem Bible. Go thy way, eat thy bread with joy, and drink thy wine with a merry heart, for God has already accepted thy works. So, joy. Simcháh means joy. And in this verse we are encouraged to have joy, because God has already accepted our works. So, that imposes that a lack of joy might have something to do with being afraid that God doesn't see our work, or does not take pleasure in our works or anything, or doesn't think we're doing good or something like that. But we are encouraged to be joyful, for our works are accepted. As for grammar, when you look at this verse in the Hebrew Bible, when you know a bit about Hebrew, you don't see the word simcháh, but you see a letter before the sin, the beit, and beit means, among other things, with. So, the simcháh, with joy. When I look at my dictionary, I find for simcháh joy, gladness, rejoicing, feast, or banquet. So it's also feast or festival is also called a simcháh. When I record this, it's the end of August of 2022. So it's almost time for the high holidays again in the Jewish community. And one of the festivals is called Simchat Torah. Joy because of the Torah. It's also the name of festivals. Some word connections when words have the same characters. We can suppose a word connection. So that is the case in this with this word as well. Samach is a verb, and it means to be glad, cheerful, joyful, merry, or to rejoice. Sameach means glad, or joyful, or cheerful, or rejoicing. See, these words are exactly inside our word, simcháh, and of course they have to do with each other. And then there's seach. Seach means thought or meditation, and it appears only once in the Hebrew Bible. Of course, thought and meditation appear often in English, but this particular Hebrew word for it appears only once in Amos 4 verse 13. And it's said of God, it's about God's thought and meditation. It's about that men know what God's, or are able to know God's thought and meditations. And we know that God wants good things for us, not bad things, or wants us to be good. He doesn't want us to be, dull with happiness all the time or something like that, this life, but He has a good purpose for us. So, we all know that being glad or not being glad, having simcháh or not, has a lot to do with how we think, what we focus on, what catches our mind, or what we keep in mind. So thought meditation has a lot to do with this word. Characters of the word. Hebrew characters have a personality, and we start with sin. Sin means tooth, or to process, or to ground, or to pay, or to forgive. We need to process everything that happened to us, everything that we did. There's a lot of people who haven't processed things from the past, and sometimes there has to be payment, or when things cannot be made smooth or something like that, we need forgiveness, or we need someone to carry it away. So sin, dealing with what needs to be dealt with. Sin has a numerical value of 300, and well, I'm going deep into the letters now. I hope you don't mind. I think, and well, that's also it's also the case that sin 300 has something to do with Gimel, which is 3, and Lamed, which is 30. And Gimel and Lamed are both letters of movement. Something happens in with Gimel and Lamed. They are something is moving, and I think that with letter sin, something is moving on a higher or maybe a deeper level. So it's also a letter about movement. Later in this video I'll talk more about that. Mem, water, time in the desert or waiting time. We discussed that last time with the word Ema. The time in the desert and the waiting time is also the time when God speaks to his people. And in the desert, and while we wait for some revelation or something, we can be joyful in those times. Chet, 8, means fence or enclosure, and it means instilling. In the Chet phase, the Torah, the instruction of God, the biblical way of living is engraved in the hearts of his people. It's something from inside. It's not something that was laid upon the people to do like a yoke, but it's instilled in their hearts. That's Chet. So it's also an important character of this word. And Hey, numerical value of 5, means opening or upper window, where through a voice can enter, a still small voice. And this Hey appears in God's name twice. So it's important, if you want to have joy, to keep this opening, to keep it clean, to keep it flowing. An opening to upstairs. First mention of this word is Genesis 31, verse 27. Why didst thou flee away secretly? This is Laban to Jacob. And rob me, and didst not tell me, that I might have sent thee away with mirth, and with songs, with timbrel, and with lyre. I had a hard time with this verse, because I thought, why is it that this Laban, this hypocrite, lying person, takes the word simcháh, or speaks the word simcháh for the first time in the Bible. So I've struggled with that, and I've come up with I've searched and read, and I've come up with a few ideas. So first, this simcháh is taken away from him. Jacob fled. So Laban couldn't do anything about saying goodbye to his children and his grandchildren. So he missed the joy of acting, of doing something, of being part of the lives of Jacob and his daughters. So that's one thing. And what I found when I was reading is that in Jewish tradition, Lavan has something to do with simcha. There's a custom that there should not be two parties at the same moment. You should celebrate one thing at a time. And that comes from Lavan. That's learned from him, because when he betrayed Jacob by making him marry his daughter Leah instead of Rachel, Jacob confronts him, and Laban says, you can marry Rachel also, but you have to wait for a week. So this is first Leah's party, and it should be her party, her simcháh. And then in a week you can marry Rachel also. So that's also a connection of Lavan with simcháh. Numbers 10 verse 10 and Deuteronomy 28 verse 37 and 38. Also, in the day of your gladness, and in your solemn days, and in the beginnings of your months, you shall blow with the trumpets over your burnt offerings, and over the sacrifices of your peace offerings, that they may be to you for a memorial before your God. I am the Lord your God. So, times of gladness and solemn days are not days to pass by quietly. They have to be celebrated. Here it says with trumpets, you have to do something about those times when you remember, or when we remember what God has done for His people and for us in our lives. And Deuteronomy 28, because thou wouldst not serve the Lord thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart, for the abundance of all things, therefore shalt thou serve thy enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee in hunger, and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in want of all things, and he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck, until he have destroyed thee. Well, I think this not serving with joyfulness, to serve in Hebrew, avad, serving God in a religious way and serving other human beings is the exact same thing. So serving as a religion and serving in your job are the same thing. And you should do those things with joyfulness. And I think it's very natural to, when you lack joyfulness, to feel your work and everything you have to do like a yoke of iron upon your neck. It's the consequence of not being joyful. 2 Samuel 6 verse 12. And it was told King David, saying, the Lord has blessed the house of Obed-Edom and all that he has, because of the ark of God. So David went and brought up the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom into the city of David with gladness. David is glad at the right time, when he should. There was fear of the ark, because someone who had not dealt with the ark in a proper manner was killed. And then the ark, was parked in Obed-Edom's house, so to say, and he was blessed because of it. He knew the right way to deal with the ark, which is a symbol of the presence of God in the Old Testament. And when David sees that it is a blessing to have the ark so close, he brings it back to where it should be. Isaiah 51 verse 3 and 11. For the Lord shall comfort Zion, he will comfort all her waste places, and he will make her wilderness like Eden, and her desert like the garden of joy, the garden of the Lord. Joy and gladness shall be found in it, thanksgiving and the voice of melody. And verse 11. Therefore the redeemed of the Lord shall return, and come with singing to Zion, and everlasting joy shall be upon their head. They shall obtain gladness and joy, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away. So these are promises of joy to Zion after a hard time, after they've been redeemed. And you can see also in verse 3 the word joy. That's not simcháh. There simcháh is translated with gladness, and the Hebrew word that's translated with joy is sason. Word doesn't appear many times in the Bible. It doesn't even appear in the Torah in the first 5 books. First appearance is Isaiah 12 verse 3, where it says, with joy you shall draw water from the wells of salvation. Beautiful verse. And we see that the The chet of instillment is not part of the word sason. So there's an important difference I read between sason and simcháh. Sason is the joy for something. Joy because of something that happened. But simcháh is a deeper joy. Is a joy that is not dependent on circumstances. That's a joy that can be in one's heart all the time, despite the circumstances. So that's a difference, and the source where I found this, I will get to the source soon. Simcháh, first mentioned in Psalms, is Psalm 4 verse 8. Thou hast put more gladness in my heart than they have whose corn and wine are increased. I think I misspelled that. So that's an illustration of the word simcháh. Simcháh is a deeper joy than the joy someone feels when their riches increase. Psalm 97 verse 11, light is sown for the righteous and gladness for the upright of heart. I have to think about Lavan with this text, the simcháh was not for him, it was taken from him because Jacob had fled without telling him. And Lavan is not very upright of heart. Righteous and upright of heart in the Bible doesn't mean someone without flaws. It means someone who is honest about himself, someone who knows him or herself, who knows that he or she has faults, and who also knows that God has not given up on him, that he is loved, that he is created in a good way, and that the fact that he woke up and that he has a breath this day means that there's something to do for him in the world, or even on his own character. So that's righteous. That's upright in heart, knowing who you are, not being dishonest about that, and knowing that you have to grow and that you can grow. Simcháh even appears in the book of Job, verse 5 of chapter 20. I also read verse 4. Knowest thou not this of old, since man was placed upon earth, that the triumphing of the wicked is short, and the joy of the hypocrite but for a moment? Well, I can't help but also think about Laban at this time, and I think what this verse says is true, but maybe it's not something Job's friends should have said at his lowest point. Maybe I can imagine that this statement was not very helpful at that time. Maybe it was, but I can imagine it wasn't. But joy is for the upright of heart, not for the hypocrite. The word appears in Esther, chapter 8, verse 16 and 17, also in chapter 9, but I chose to read chapter 8. The Jews had light and gladness and joy and honor, and every province and in every city, wherever the king's commandment and his decree came, the Jews had joy and gladness, a feast and a holiday. And many of the people of the land became Jews, for the fear of the Jews fell upon them. Well, you see here the words I made red, there it says simcháh, and the words I made green again, there it says sason. So the Current Jerusalem Bible is not very concordant here. They mix the words. I'm sure they had a reason for that. But there was gladness and joy. And how come? The enemy wasn't defeated yet. There still had to be a fight, and when the enemy is defeated again, there's gladness and joy, of course, but it's even there beforehand, and there is gladness and joy because the Jews now in chapter 8 are allowed to take action against their enemies. They do not have to sit still and wait to be destroyed. They are permitted to take action, to fight back, and that's a reason for simcháh and for sassoon. Simcháh means getting up and doing something. That is a big part of having simcháh, of having joy. Okay, that was the last verse for today. Here are some sources that I use to make these word studies. The difference between simcháh and sasson, I found that on safaria.org. If you don't know the website, it's wonderful. It's in English and Hebrew, and there's the Tanakh, the Jewish Hebrew Bible, but also a lot of more texts and explanations and sources. It's wonderful. Safaria. Van Hoofd tot Hart is a Dutch book by Ellen Morinus, but that's translation. It appeared in English first, and the English title is With Heart in Mind. I'm sure you could find that book if you want to read it. But that's a Mussar book. All the other sources I mention are for Hebrew word study. And it all started for me with this book, Hebrew in 6 Days. It's the book that belongs with the Aleph course. Well, when you're interested, you can look it up or send me an email or anything. So this course is also available in English. If you want to know more, please send me an email. If you want a heads up with every new video that appears in English, you can send me an email and I'll put you on my mailing list. I'd love to hear from you. For now, have a peaceful Saturday and a good Sunday. Lietgoud.